Ladies and gentlemen, isn't it funny? How people lose their sleep, not because of their own problems, but because of your name. Yeah, your name. They whisper it in corners. They argue about it in group chats. They stalk your life like detectives with no salary. Who are they talking to? Who do they love? Who do they belong to? Look at them, acting like your name is a crime scene and your happiness is evidence. See, the real joke is not you. The real joke is how uncomfortable people get when they can't control your story. They want your name connected to their expectations, their rules, their opinions. But what scares them most is that your name belongs to IOU. And today, let's talk about why your name becomes a problem when you stop living for the crowd and start living for yourself. People get nervous when they cannot put you inside a box. They feel safe when they can label you quiet, weak, predictable, ordinary. But the moment you start thinking for yourself, moving differently, making decisions without asking for permission, something inside them starts shaking. They smile in front of you, but behind that smile their minds are full of questions. Why are they changing? Who do they think they are? Why aren't they following the same rules? Control is their comfort. Predictability is their security blanket. When you stop reacting the way they expect, you become a disturbance in their peaceful little illusion. Because now they cannot predict your next move. They cannot manipulate your emotions. They cannot press the same buttons anymore. That is when they start watching you more closely. Not because they admire you, but because uncertainty scares them. Humans fear uncertainty more than danger sometimes. If they know you are dangerous, at least they know what you are. But when they cannot figure you out, when your silence becomes deeper, your focus sharper, and your reactions calmer, now they feel like they are standing in front of a locked door without a key. And nothing bothers people more than a door they cannot open. So they start guessing. They start assuming. They start creating stories about you because their minds cannot tolerate missing information. If you don't explain yourself, they will explain you. If you don't show your weakness, they will invent one. If you don't share your plans, they will create rumors about your intentions. Because mystery feels like power. Think about it. Nobody fears the loud person who explains everything. Nobody fears the person who constantly seeks approval. But the person who moves quietly, improves silently, and answers only when necessary, that person makes people uncomfortable. Your independence feels like rebellion to those who depend on validation. Your confidence feels like arrogance to those full of doubt. Your privacy feels like secrecy to those who overshare everything. And suddenly, without trying, you become a psychological puzzle they cannot solve. And humans hate unsolved puzzles. That is why they try to regain control in small ways. They ask unnecessary questions. They test your reactions. They bring up your past. They remind you who you used to be. They try to provoke emotions just to confirm you are still controllable. Just to see if the old version of you is still hiding somewhere. But when you respond with calm instead of chaos, silence instead of explanations, confidence instead of defense, that's when fear slowly replaces their curiosity. Because now they realize something dangerous. You are not reacting anymore. And a person who cannot be emotionally pulled like a puppet becomes very hard to control. That is when respect and fear start looking very similar. Some will call you changed like it's an insult. Some will say you became cold. Some will say you forgot people. But what really bothers them is not your change. It's their lost influence. They miss the version of you they could predict. They miss the version of you that needed reassurance. They miss the version of you that cared too much about opinions. because that version was easy to manage. But now you move with intention. Now your kindness has boundaries. Now your attention has value. Now your time is not free for everyone. And nothing scares people more than realizing they no longer have automatic access to you. Power was never about shouting. Power was never about dominance. Real power is emotional self-control. Real power is knowing who you are without needing constant confirmation. Real power is walking your path, even when people are watching, judging, and waiting for you to fail. Because the moment you stop needing permission, you become unpredictable, and unpredictable people. They always make the world a little nervous. When you stop explaining yourself, everything changes. People are used to getting access to your thoughts, your reasons, your excuses. They want a running commentary on your life, a play-by-play of your choices, a justification for every little action. And when you stop giving it to them, it throws them off balance. They have been trained to expect answers, to expect clarity, to expect a version of you that fits neatly into their understanding. But when you remain silent, when you act without giving permission for judgment, suddenly you are no longer a character in their story. You become the author of your own story, and that terrifies them. Because people don't like ambiguity. They don't like gaps in the narrative that they can't control. They want to know why you're doing what you're doing, who you're with, and what you're thinking. If they can't label it, if they can't rationalize it, their minds start racing. They start inventing reasons that may not exist. They start filling in the blanks with gossip, suspicion, and assumptions. Your silence becomes a mirror reflecting all their insecurities. The quieter you are, the louder their theories become. Explaining yourself feels like submission. Every time you justify your actions, every time you try to make them understand, you give them a tool to manipulate you. They start measuring you, controlling you, predicting your moves. You become predictable, and predictability is a weakness disguised as courtesy. People prefer a version of you they can explain because control is comforting and comfort is an addiction. Once you stop feeding that addiction, the calm surface begins to ripple. They sense the change even if they can't articulate it. Their unease grows, their curiosity sharpens, and their obsession with your name intensifies. When you stop explaining yourself, you create space. Space where no one can intrude. Space where your decisions belong solely to you. Space where your power quietly rises. And the more they ask, the more they probe, the more they demand an explanation, the more you see that the problem isn't them. They are just scared. Scared that they no longer have access. Scared that they no longer understand. Scared that you are no longer theirs to judge, to define, or to control. You are no longer a story they can narrate. You are a presence they can only observe. People think that honesty means giving everything away. They confuse transparency with vulnerability. But the truth is, your life doesn't require an audience. Your choices don't need approval. Your goals don't need consensus. The more you stop explaining yourself, the more you reclaim your identity. You establish boundaries that are invisible but felt. You become a person whose name carries weight, not because of what they say about it, but because of what you refuse to justify. And fear, fear starts creeping in quietly. It hides behind questions, behind whispers, behind innocent curiosity. They wonder what you're planning, who you're talking to, where your allegiance lies. They analyze your words, your tone, your gestures, hoping for a clue, for a weakness, for a window into your mind. But when there is nothing to exploit, when your silence is deliberate, their anxiety grows. Every unanswered question becomes a reflection of their lack of control. Every unexplained action, a reminder that your life is yours, not theirs. The power of not explaining yourself is subtle but devastating. It's not loud. It doesn't announce itself. But it unsettles people in ways they cannot measure. They begin to respect boundaries they never acknowledged before, even if they would never admit it out loud. They start thinking twice before probing, before criticizing, before assuming they know the story. Your refusal to justify your existence becomes a lesson they didn't ask for but desperately needed. And as you move through life without the need to explain, people begin to realize something essential, that independence is a force more terrifying than any argument, any rumor, any manipulation. Because when you no longer answer to them, when your life is no longer a puzzle for them to solve, they have no control. And nothing scares people more than someone who cannot be contained, who cannot be predicted, who refuses to justify the beauty and chaos of their own being. Curiosity is natural, but when it turns into jealousy, it becomes dangerous. People start watching you, not because they admire you, but because they can't stand that someone else is living differently, living freely, living boldly. They start noticing the little things, how you smile, how you carry yourself, how people respond to you. Every small victory of yours becomes a trigger for their envy. It's not enough that you exist and thrive in their eyes. Your success highlights their failures. Your confidence exposes their insecurities, and your happiness reminds them of what they are missing. Jealousy hides behind questions that seem innocent, behind compliments that sting, behind casual comments that are really tests. Oh, who were you with? Did they like that post? Why are they paying attention to you? Every inquiry, every glance, every whispered word is a way to measure themselves against you, to figure out if they still matter in a world that seems increasingly focused on your light. And the more they observe, the more they try to pull you into their orbit, to reduce your shine so that they feel a sense of control. It's fascinating how human minds work. They convince themselves that they are curious, that they are just trying to understand, when really it's jealousy disguised as interest. Every story they craft about you, every assumption they make, is rooted in the fear that someone else has taken what they secretly desire: attention, admiration, power, influence. They guess your intentions, your motivations, your loyalties, and every time they fail to predict your moves, the jealousy deepens. They think if they can control the narrative of your life, they can control the emotions it stirs in them. And when they can't control it, the obsession grows. They begin comparing everything about themselves to everything about you. Their achievements, their relationships, their confidence. Always finding what they lack and resenting it silently. Their curiosity is no longer harmless. It becomes a weapon aimed at understanding, questioning, even undermining you. They watch your social media, they read between your words, they stalk your energy to figure out what makes you tick. They want to guess who you call yours, because it gives them a sense of participation, a sense that they are part of the story, even when they are just outsiders. But what's most ironic is that their obsession only proves your power. The more they guess, the more they watch, the more they try to control or predict. The more they validate your presence in ways they would never admit. Your life becomes a mirror, reflecting their dissatisfaction. And every glance they cast toward you is evidence that your confidence, your independence, and your authenticity are more valuable than they can comprehend. The act of guessing is a silent acknowledgement of your influence, whether they realize it or not. When curiosity escalates into jealousy, it reshapes their behavior. They start to overanalyze interactions, invent conspiracies, and read between the lines where nothing exists. They obsess over your choices, attempting to map out a life that is not theirs. The funny thing is, they are trying to replicate the sense of control they have lost over themselves. They are trying to claim, in some small way, what they see you owning naturally: freedom, clarity, self-assurance. And the harder they try, the more obvious it becomes that the power has always been with you. Jealousy is relentless because it's self-destructive. It feeds on comparison, and the target of that jealousy, your name, your life, your energy, becomes an unintentional measure of their inadequacy. Every time they guess incorrectly, every time they misinterpret your motives, every time they feel left out of your orbit, their own insecurity swells. Meanwhile, you continue forward, moving with clarity and purpose, unaware of their speculation, unshaken by their whispers. And the truth is, the moment you stop reacting to their curiosity, the moment you stop explaining, just living authentically, you become untouchable. The guessing, the stalking, the bickering, it all loses power over you. Because jealousy only survives when fed by reaction, attention, or fear. Remove the fuel, and it collapses. Your presence, your confidence, and the unapologetic way you move through the world is the ultimate revenge against those who try to guess who you belong to. They wanted to control the story, but they were never the authors. You were. And that realization, it drives them crazy. People watch because they are desperate for a window into your world. They observe your every move, your every expression, your every decision, as if your life is a show they've been given front row tickets to. And they're not watching because they care. They're watching because your confidence unsettles them. There's something unnerving about someone who owns their space, someone who walks with purpose, someone who radiates a quiet certainty that doesn't seek approval. It's uncomfortable for them because it reminds them of everything they've denied themselves, every time they've guessed, every time they've muted their own desires to fit someone else's script. But the crowd thrives on predictability. They crave control, consistency, explanations, and patterns. When they can anticipate your reactions, when they can predict your thoughts, when they can convince themselves they understand you, they feel safe. But the moment you start moving differently, the moment you act without justification, the moment you exude confidence without apology, now they are forced to reckon with uncertainty. And uncertainty is terrifying. That's why they watch. Not out of admiration, not out of love, not even out of curiosity. They watch because your autonomy challenges them. Your presence forces them to confront their limitations, their fears, their doubts. Every confident step you take becomes a mirror reflecting their insecurities, and every time you succeed without needing validation, their unease deepens. They analyze your gestures, your words, your interactions, trying to predict the next move, trying to find a flaw they can exploit, trying to restore the illusion that they are still in control. Watching you becomes their silent obsession. They bicker in their minds about your intentions, your choices, your alliances. They stalk your digital footprints, your social signals, even your casual conversations, looking for patterns, looking for cracks, looking for confirmation that they are still relevant in your orbit. Every glance you give, every word you speak, every move you make, becomes data for them to dissect, a puzzle they are desperate to solve. And the more they try to understand, the more uncomfortable they become. They start guessing, overanalyzing, creating scenarios that may not exist at all. The uncertainty gnaws at them because they can't force reality to fit their expectations. Your confidence, your independence, your refusal to explain becomes a silent rebellion against their desire for control. The energy you radiate, the space you claim, the choices you make, these are all reminders that your life is yours alone and that they are outsiders peering through the glass. Some will attempt subtle manipulation. They will test your reactions, prod at your boundaries, and try to provoke emotions to see if they can regain control. Others will gossip, spread rumors, or question your motives in private conversations, hoping to unsettle you indirectly. But nothing works when your confidence is anchored in self-awareness and your focus is unwavering. The crowd can speculate, they can assume, they can whisper. But they cannot touch your core, they cannot dictate your path, and they cannot dim the light you carry. Because confidence isn't loud. Confidence isn't in the flashy display or the desperate need to impress. Real confidence is a quiet force that moves through life unapologetically. It's in the way you stand, the way you respond, the way you refuse to justify yourself. And when people watch you closely, it's not because they admire these qualities. It's because these qualities are threatening. They make people confront their own inadequacies. They expose the cracks in the facades they've built around themselves. And that discomfort, it makes them obsessed. People can be fascinated by control, but what they fear is influence. And your confidence gives you influence without effort. Your calm in chaos, your poise in scrutiny, your self-possession in the middle of bickering. They all create ripples that the crowd cannot ignore. They may act casual, they may pretend indifference, but every glance they steal, every question they whisper, every guess they make about you is evidence that your presence is powerful, your energy is magnetic, and your life is not theirs to judge or direct. And that's when it becomes clear the crowd watches not because they understand, not because they approve, not because they control, but because your authenticity is dangerous. It's dangerous because it's uncontainable, unpredictable, undeniable. And in that danger, in that chaos, in that unshakable self-possession, lies the true power that makes people watch, bicker and obsess, all while you continue walking your path unbothered. Power isn't in the noise. Power isn't in the attention you chase or the approval you beg for. Real power lies in the quiet moments where no one is watching, in the decisions you make when no one is judging, in the boundaries you set that no one else can cross. When you stop seeking approval, when you stop trying to fit into someone else's narrative, something shifts. People feel it. The energy changes. The air grows heavier because your life is no longer a stage for them to control or comment on. Your choices are yours alone, and that independence radiates like fire, subtle but undeniable, and everyone around you feels its heat. Approval is a leash. When you constantly seek it, you hand the power of your emotions over to others. Their opinions shape your mood. Their judgments dictate your confidence, and their expectations become invisible chains that hold you back. But the moment you stop caring about whether they understand or accept you, you break free. Suddenly, your energy no longer belongs to them. It belongs to you. And the world notices because humans instinctively sense when control has slipped through their fingers. Confidence is not arrogance, it is refusal. Refusal to bend, refusal to explain, refusal to conform. And when you stop asking for validation, people begin to realize that your identity is untouchable. They may try to test you, prod you, manipulate situations to see if you'll respond. But you don't. You move with clarity, with purpose, with a calm that unsettles those who are used to being able to stir your waters. Every reaction they hope to provoke, every insecurity they hope to exploit, meets silence, meets intention, meets control that they cannot break. When you stop seeking approval, boundaries become invisible but impenetrable. They cannot influence your choices, dictate your relationships, or shape your ambitions. Your time, your energy, your focus, they all gain value automatically because they are no longer commodities freely given to those who do not respect them. People begin to understand, even subconsciously, that you cannot be bought, swayed, or manipulated. Your presence is self-contained, And that independence makes others restless, curious, and sometimes jealous. The absence of dependence on approval creates an unspoken authority. You no longer react to criticism in fear, nor do you celebrate praise in need. You are steady, constant, unwavering. That constancy, that self-possession, is magnetic and intimidating at the same time. It draws attention without seeking it, commands respect without demanding it, and makes people acutely aware of the difference between someone living for themselves and someone living for the world's approval. And the funny thing about power is that it's invisible until someone tries to take it from you. When you stop looking for permission, when you refuse to explain your choices, when your confidence is rooted in self-respect rather than external validation, people feel it as a subtle threat. They notice the energy shift. They sense the independence. They observe that your focus cannot be shaken by gossip, criticism, or manipulation. And in that sense, your power becomes undeniable, not because you shouted it, not because you flaunted it, but because you never needed to prove it in the first place. Living without seeking approval transforms relationships too. People who only want to see themselves reflected in you will struggle. Those who respect authenticity will be drawn closer. Your circle becomes intentional, your interactions deliberate, and your energy protected. Nothing leaks, nothing bends, nothing loses shape. And the more they notice your stability, your calm, your refusal to react to external noise, the more they understand that the true source of your influence is not in the things you show, but in the things you refuse to surrender. Power, at its core, is emotional independence. It is the ability to move through chaos without losing yourself, to make decisions without fear of judgment, to prioritize your growth over external validation. And when people see that, when they feel that, they may not understand it fully, but they know it is dangerous. Dangerous because it cannot be controlled. Dangerous because it cannot be stolen. Dangerous because it is yours entirely, unapologetically, and without compromise. And that is the beauty of refusing approval. The world can bicker, guess, stalk, and speculate, but none of it touches the essence of who you are. Your identity is your armor, your independence is your weapon, and your life, lived on your terms, becomes untouchable. They may try to label you, define you, or predict you, but the truth is, the person who no longer seeks approval has already won, because they are the author of their own story, the master of their own destiny, and the keeper of a power that no one can take away.